Check, check. Just a quick note as you guys are walking in here, you are more than welcome to any of these resource guides that we have up here. You're not required to take them for class or anything, but I think that they might be helpful if you're really interested in the topic that is at hand tonight and maybe useful for you or some loved ones. We'll talk more about that as we get going. Hey, while we're gathering in, if you're finding your spot, congratulations. Now let's stand up and we'll sing a couple of songs before we get going tonight with the topic. Let's sing together. Guys, start us out.
I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and so shall I be saved from my enemies. We know the Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock that God, my salvation be exalted. I know the Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock that God, my salvation be exalted. Jesus Christ died for me, and He took away my sin. I will live with Him for eternity. You know the Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock that God, my salvation be exalted. I know the Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock that God, my salvation be exalted. I will call upon the Lord. Precious cornerstone, sure foundation, you are faithful to the end. We are waiting on you, Jesus, and we believe you're all to us. Only Son of God, sent from heaven, hope and mercy
I want to thank you for being here tonight. This is our part two of just a 2-week series that we wanted to do on the Christian and mental health issues. And I got to let you know that I'm really excited about being at Sunset because honestly, we're tremendously blessed to have within our ranks, in a sense, a lot of very talented counselors, and these are just 4 of them here. All right.
The talented ones couldn't be here.
Right. Yeah. This is the D team, and some are the F team. But I do want to introduce them. So because there are some issues that I know that were not written down. First off, I want to tell you thank you so much for the things that you wrote down, the questions that you had. They were really good. And I know there were questions that you wish you could have asked or wanted to ask, but weren't real sure. And I want to introduce you to them because here's what all of these gentlemen have said is this: if you need help, we're here to help you. And that's the spirit of Sunset. If you need help, we're here to help you. That's what I really love about this church, is we try and help each other. And so I want to introduce them so that later on, if you do have a question and later on you need to talk to somebody or you need, down the line, things in your life change and you need help, we want to let you know that we're here to help you. And so all of these wonderful men up here are licensed counselors. This is Lon Baker, all right? The nice aged man here in the middle is David Hooten. He shakes really well, doesn't he? I love David. He's on the adult ed group, so I could kid him as much as I want. This is David Henniger, and this is our beloved Link Blevins, who I just noticed is getting a little grayer over here on this side. Yeah, that's the kids that are starting to hit. So what we're going to try and do is this, is that you had a series of questions that you asked that what we're going to do is I'm just going to share the question with you. I've designated somebody to start the dialogue with this, but they're all going to be sort of jumping in and talking a little bit about that. But I did want to start with this one. And again, I want to say first off is thank you for your transparency. And we specifically didn't want to put names on these cards, but we wanted to give a person opportunity. And the card that I'm about ready to read, here's what I want to say to you is this. I really want you to go talk to, and David Henniger has volunteered to meet with you and just talk with you about sort of where you are right now and getting some help and finding some comfort, finding some peace. And this was what was written. And so this person, I would just want to, I want to encourage you to go talk with David. The 2 Davids even in the middle here. And, but it says this: when I look in the mirror, I don't know who is looking back. I don't recognize me. Even from as little as 8 years ago. When I look at the picture from 8 years ago, it makes me sad. Do I need to go through the process of grieving for the past life? Do I have survivor's guilt because I didn't die of COVID when others did and I couldn't prevent it? And there's just a lot of pain there, and there's a lot of sadness there. And I just really want to encourage you to seek help. We're here to help you. And so if that was you, please go see David.
Come see me,
Yeah.
right? Listen, these guys are the real license. I'm a guy that has a bunch of education and a schlup that has been doing some pastoral stuff for the last 20 years, but I care about you. And we want to find the best help that we can for you. Maybe that's me, but maybe it's one of these guys or somebody else as well.
Okay. So we're just going to proceed on here with our questions. We have a lot, but we'll just do the best we can. And so let's start with this. Are children of Christian families faring any better than children in the general population? That's a good question. And I'm going to start off with Lon here. Lon, why don't you address this, and you guys just, pitch in when you can. Yes. Green means
Okay.
go.
Yeah,
He's a really good counselor, just not great with mics.
yeah. Got to get the microphone to work first. So I looked into this one a little bit this week as we were getting ready for tonight, because this one is kind of complicated. I think whenever we think about large groups of people, it's hard to say in broad strokes that yes, all kids of Christian families are doing better than the general population. So I think that would be a really hard thing to be able to speak to in a big general terms. But there has been some really good research that's looked into what are the characteristics, what are the qualities of the families and the kids that are doing really well compared to the secular world counterparts. And so there's been some secular research and some Christian faith-based research that's looked into this, and so some major things stand out. For in broad terms, people who have an active daily, weekly faith are doing better than people who don't have faith at all, and so that's good news, right? The people who are attending church regularly, the people who are praying regularly, the people who see their parents living out their faith, that they have that as a part of their world on a regular basis, they do better. So they are experiencing less mental health concerns. Not that they don't have any, okay, but they do experience less severe. Also less like substance use issues, less risky or dangerous behavior, so less criminal behavior. So when these things are going on, if there is regular church attendance, regular prayer, the family is involved in this together, not just, you should do this because it's good for you, but it's something that's an active part of their life, then those types of things tend toward positive outcomes. There's a book called Sticky Faith that our youth ministers recommend, and so if you're interested in that, this book speaks to a lot of these key factors that bode well for lifelong faith for our young people. So if you're interested in looking for a resource, Sticky Faith is one that is really good in this area.
Okay. David?
As we get started, though, there's an assumption here that I think we need to address, and that is that some people have the false idea that if you're a Christian, you don't deal with these issues. That's not true. And if you are a Christian and you are dealing with any kind of emotional or mental health issue, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that your faith is weak. It just means you're a human being trying to make it. And Elijah was depressed. So the reality is we want to set a stage that it's okay to be struggling. It's less okay to struggle by yourself. So that's what we're trying to do.
And we're gonna hit that issue more and more. And there's a couple other questions, and this is really a really large issue. Is this, as a Christian, am I even supposed to be dealing with this? And I was raised also in a culture that was like, no, if you just prayed more, if you just studied more, if you did that, until I went through depression. Then I realized that is not, prayer and Bible study are obviously, but that wouldn't help in my depression. And so we're going to be hitting that over and over again, that just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I don't struggle with these things. That is not true. And I want you to make sure you really hear that tonight. We'll hit it a couple more times there. Here's another one, is this. Henniger, I'm going to have you do this. I've lost my spouse of 54 years about 5 years ago, and my daughter died 2 months after him of addictive issues. What is the best way to deal with this?
Wow. First of all, sorry for the losses, and I mean that, and I don't know who this is, but that's a big thing, especially in the last 2 years that we've been in. And what I want to say just initially to this person is, there's some major grieving that has to happen. And just a simple look at grief and the way that I've started to talk about it is you've exited out of a reality that you knew and that you were familiar with, and you've got to learn how to function and live in a brand new reality. It's like comparing it to the multiverse, right? You've gone out of one universe and have entered into a completely new one, and that's a scary thing, and it can cause a lot of things. And what I want to say to that is, at the very least, you need to probably talk with somebody and get a checkup and see if you're dealing with it the right way, and in a healthy way, in a way that's productive toward your healing in this. And just because we cry tears over these things, sometimes every single day, because something else pops up, doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that you had extreme love for these people in your life, and that's a pretty normal reaction. There's a whole host of other normal reactions to things, but it takes probably somebody from the outside, and it doesn't always necessarily need to be a counselor. There are some programs, one that we've had here, and I think is still going on to some degree, is a program called Grief Share. So I would encourage you to look into that, and maybe seek out some group therapy with that, just to help process things and life, how it's going, and seeing about heading into the next steps of better.
Link, why don't you want to add something to that?
Well, I was just kind of looking at this and parsing out this question and realizing, so there's a death of a spouse of 54 years, and that is already enough, right? But then 2 months later, to have an additional death of a child, I don't know how old the daughter is or was, but 2 months after that, to definitely, just to echo what David was saying, was it is okay to definitely seek help and find a space that you can grieve both of these individually in some way, but also together, and allow yourself the full range of emotions, including anger and disappointment, not only maybe with other people, but even just within how faith can work sometimes. And allowing that to be, I always just say, give yourself grace to grieve, and that not to compare your grief, that everyone experiences loss, and that's a universal thing, but grief is very individual, and so even the way that two people will grieve the same loss will be different, right? And that doesn't mean someone's doing it better or someone's doing it worse. But I would imagine the last 5 years have been, like you said, a different reality. And so it's okay to reach out to people and share that.
Yeah. We do Grief Share. We do have Grief Share here. It meets on Tuesday nights. For more information about that I think it's Joe Brock who's doing that. Rodney will also have information, but we do have Grief Share here. So I just want you to be aware of that. It meets in the parlor on Tuesday nights. I believe it meets at 7. Maybe what time does it meet? Somebody know? 6:30. 6:30. Okay, thank you so much. 6:30 in the parlor. And so we do have that. Link, I'd like for you to address this. How to find a cognitive behavioral therapist, Christian counselor, or how do we know who to see? I mean, let's sort of deal with this finding a counselor and the ups and downs of that, and walk us through that a little bit.
So here is the challenge. Now, this one's asking specifically for cognitive behavior therapy, which is one of the main approaches in therapy. But you look into therapies, and there are over 450 different types of therapy in the world today. And that was a stat from about 12 years ago. And so there's always new ones kind of being brought up and stuff. Now, cognitive behavior is definitely one of the main ones. One of the best ways maybe to look and to try to find someone locally. Now, one thing about the pandemic is it did kind of open up even online therapy. And so there's even a lot of online options coming up, and there's celebrities endorsing different types of avenues for that, and so there's a lot more maybe resources now available. We also have a resource sheet we did last week, maybe even some more here tonight. But there is an online like Yellow Pages site called Psychology Today. It's just psychologytoday.com, And it really is like the online, yellow pages for mental health. You can go on there, you can select what city or county, Lubbock County, and then you can even, they have about, I think, 50, maybe 40 or 50 different types of therapy options, and so definitely cognitive behavior you can find. You can even find those who you identify as Christian therapists or Christian counseling. And so there are a lot of ways with that to kind of go through and find, as well as like how much people charge, are they accepting new clients, all that other wonderful stuff. But Psychology Today would be a great maybe first step too of just finding help if you're trying to find it on your own. I would say there's a lot of counselors connected with churches, and to talk to Monty, and just everyone email Monty tomorrow.
It's
Sorry,
Monty at SS Sunset.
No, I'm just saying, like, the good thing is that especially when it comes to Christian therapy and things, Gary, I mean, there's a lot of options just even here at Sunset to help get you connected. Even if not with with someone maybe here, helping you get connected with other people locally. So there are some great avenues to try to find that.
And that a couple things on that. Again, we do want to offer this. These resource packets are filled with resources that come from each one of these guys as far as just availability of counselors and different types of help that are going to be offered. We do at Sunset, the ministers do have a list of counselors that we've talked to, a list of counselors who we go, hey, this would be somebody we have confidence in for you to go see. So if that's the case, come and see one of us. You don't have to go to Monty, just every other person go to Monty. And then, all right, let's do this here just for a second. We're talking about here emotional intelligence on this next question. And David Henniger, what's the correlation between mental health issues and a culture that is emotionally illiterate? Can some mental health issues be alleviated by increasing emotional intelligence?
So let's go back to that other question really quickly, because somebody opened up the topic of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And cognitive behavioral therapy in its simplest form talks about our emotions and our behavior and our thinking and how those things play off of each other. So the whole theory behind that is if I can affect one of those things, I can then affect all of those things in some way. And so, yes, the simple answer to that is yes, you need to be emotionally intelligent people, right? Because if I don't understand what's going on inside of me, I might start suppressing emotions. And when I start suppressing emotions, guess what that's going to do as far as just depression and anxiety? If I don't know how to deal with them, if I don't know how to name them and express them correctly, it's going to come out in some way. And so I think even looking at my own self and how I deal with life, if I'm not experiencing my emotions in appropriate ways, for me personally, that can cause very quickly a low-grade depression. And sometimes I need to process it out with people, and sometimes I need external advice from those things. And so I think that there's a high correlation between emotional intelligence and overall mental and emotional health.
Okay. Anybody else want to address any more of that?
He's the smart one.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything like that, but I want to go to Lon here for just a second. Lon, talk about this. Is it possible to detect mental health issues in children under 12? And if yes, or how, if so, how?
Yes, it's definitely possible to detect and diagnose mental health concerns in kids under 12. A part of the program that Link and I work with, we work with kids down to age 10. And so, we frequently work with kids 12 and under there. But you can address mental health concerns in kids quite a bit younger than that, down 4 years old. It is a little bit more challenging with younger kids, but there are little ones that deal with lots of struggles at times, usually related to like abuse, neglect, abandonment, things like that, especially at those really young years. But yes, you can diagnose and detect these concerns in young ages. There are screening tools that are designed specifically for younger age kids. There are slightly different requirements for the presentation of like anxiety or depression in younger kids. And some things that may not be a symptom of an adult may be a symptom of a younger child. And so, yeah, there are definitely things that can be looked out for in those regards. So, if you are concerned, is my child dealing with anxiety? Are they worried too much? Then, talk with a good place to start is with your general practice, your pediatrician. They can do some basic screenings at the doctor's office. There are also some places where you can go to find screening resources online. One of those I mentioned last week is called Mental Health America. They have online screening tools that are free and anybody can do. So if you have concerns about things like that, talk with your doctor. Go to some standardized screening tools like that to be able to say, what's going on and does it raise red flags? And I think some of the big things to look out for is it causing problems with function. Is my child so worried that they can't go to school? They can't be away from me? Are they not able to do their work because they're so worried about something? That kind of thing. Are they so down and sad that they're not able to do the things they need to do? And a lot of times for little kids, it comes out in anger or irritability. They're not able to express, I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling worried. It comes out more in anger for younger kids than it does for older kids or adults.
Link, do you want to add anything to that as far as... Okay, there you go. Link, we would really like to have your undivided attention here. Stop
really good
worrying,
counseling
stop
that you're
worrying
doing
about
there.
your wife, Link. You're getting a little anxious. Okay, we could have a session right here. Role play. We're going to do it tonight, all right? David Hooten, let's do this one right here is... This was something was turned in. It says, I read a quote. It says, you are not what happens to you. I think it was in the context of an abuse situation. Do most people blame themselves when something bad happens? And how does a person not do that?
2 words, stop it. No, this is really an interesting topic because I've dealt with specifically women that have been abused for years. And I don't know necessarily why, but the victim does have a tendency to blame themselves. Now, some of that is put onto them by the abuser and just tells them it's their fault or that they can't say anything, bad things will happen, all that kind of thing. The reality of it is, I think it falls into the realm of expectations. What are they really expecting? Do you expect that because you're a Christian, you won't deal with these issues? Well, of course, that's not true. And unfortunately, the percentage of abuse and sexual abuse or physical abuse among Christians is pretty high. And that's sad. I mean, that's very, very sad. But how does a person not do it? Well, I think obviously therapy is very important. There's a realization that they were acted upon. They were abused by someone. It wasn't their fault. This other person hurt them. And to acknowledge that it wasn't a deficiency in them, right? You get to know yourself and you realize, wait a minute, it's not a deficiency in me. This person hurt me. Acknowledging that. And then, hopefully with therapy, realizing that there's nothing wrong with them. They're good people. They just were hurt. I don't know if that makes much sense. It's very complicated. It's very complicated. But this is where some therapy would be beneficial, I think.
Are there some let's deal with this about blame and shame and that type of thing. Are there some specific things that you would say or recommend to that person who's in the midst of a blaming or a shaming type of situation?
Well, and I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. So the reality is what I would do is I ask people, what do you want? In some form or another, what is it you want? What are you doing to get that? How's it working? Okay, so somebody that feels blamed and guilty, what do you want? Well, I want to be free of this, and I want to feel like I'm worthwhile, okay? Well, then the next part of that is, well, what are you doing? Well, they're blaming themselves. So you see that circle. What could you do other than that? Well, acknowledging, for one thing, where that they are really a victim and the abuser is the one that did it. And starting to think of themselves in a more positive way, looking at, if they're Christians, looking at who they are as far as what God or who God says they are. Romans 8:1 for a Christian, there is therefore now no condemnation for those that are in the Lord, right? So if I'm not condemned, that's what the Scripture says, then why am I continuing to condemn myself? Does that make sense?
Okay.
What do you guys think?
No, I think that's good. One of the things that I want to mention on the back side of that is just talking about the helping relationship, right? Maybe it's not me that has experienced the abuse, but maybe it's one of my children or a close friend or something like that. And you're thinking, what can I do for this person, right? And there's a responsibility that needs to be taken from that person for their own mental and emotional health in that. However, there are things that I can do to help aid that. And I want to give you 3 quick things, right? Things that were not usually given to that person that was in an abusive situation when they were in that situation. I want to, first of all, hear their whole story and validate things that are going on, not push them further or faster than they want to go, right? But I want to hear it and I want to believe it. They didn't have a lot of belief a lot of times when they were a young child, and they tried to tell an adult, and the adult just brushed it off. Right? That's a scenario, but you get it. I want to be somebody that protects them, and I want to be somebody that defends them, because these are 3 things, especially in abuse and a sexual abuse situation, that person likely did not receive. And so if you're looking at this from a helping relationship, be somebody that believes, protects, and defends that person, especially around that scenario of their abuse.
Link?
Well, and one thing I've noticed, so for about 7.5 years, I worked as a counselor at Lubbock Christian University, working with college students, and so whenever it did come to maybe abuse, or especially if it was either physical or even like sexual assault, there is a tendency, and so we always have to kind of be careful of this, of blaming the victim, right? What were you doing? What were you wearing? Where were you at? Like, why were, and it's like, and the reality, the sad truth of life, and we all kind of know this to one degree or another, is that bad things happen. You can do everything right. You can do everything right, right? And still someone else can choose to either use their power, authority, control, whatever it might be. And you don't really, necessarily, the only thing you can do is choose how you might respond to it, right? And so this idea of like, well, I think it's worded like you are not what happens to you, right? But we live in a society, sometimes we kind of identify with what has happened to us. And it's kind of reminding yourself, maybe giving yourself the freedom to forgive yourself, right? And really forgiving yourself of things you didn't really do. But saying, I did the best I could in a horrible situation, and allowing it to be that. But a lot of times, there's a lot of lies that Satan's going to say. There's a lot of lies that an abuser would say, right? And so I always try to encourage people that to try to catch the lie, and to but to also just to allow themselves to just, if it's possible, to forgive yourself. Sometimes, honestly, it's really not forgive. It's for you didn't do anything wrong, so
Yeah.
you do everything right, and it's still.
Well, there's sort of this unspoken thing, too, and we hit on it just a second ago. It's kind of a cause and effect. If I'm a good Christian, bad things won't happen, and therefore if something bad happens, I must have caused it somehow. My faith isn't strong enough. Something's wrong. My relationship with the Lord's not good enough. So I have to be at fault. That's the faulty thinking, see? So realizing, no, you didn't do anything wrong. This other person hurt you. That's a place to start.
Okay. Link, you have the mic, and I want to, for you to deal with this, and Lon, you might want to jump in on this one too. It seems our youth are having difficulty not becoming anxious or depressed because of normal life stressors. How do we help them become more resilient to life and be able to do hard things without becoming over the top, overwhelmed?
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting in this context, even thinking about when we're at church and we say something like our youth. I'm just kind of curious, when you think of our youth in the future, do we have positive ideas for our youth in the future, or do we have some anxiety about that or some fear, right? I think it's obvious we are concerned about our young kids, especially in today's world. Very much so, I think, like my parents' generation was concerned about me, people my age. There's a lot of people concerned about me, but
We still are,
Yes,
Link.
yes, I know.
This is a present state in which you live in.
So-
all right?
one thing I do try to remind parents, even like in the program that Lon and I work in, and so I don't want to take up too much of Lon's time on this, but I do try to remind parents that until the age of 25, your brain is still developing. And so, I'm trying to think how this is worded. So whenever, yes, our youth are going to have difficulty becoming anxious and depressed, maybe, or having depressive symptoms or anxious symptoms to normal life stressors, because their brains are still developing and still growing. And the last part of the brain that will develop is the prefrontal cortex, which kind of has that part that kind of helps you kind of executive functioning, recognizing like the long-term consequences to short impulsive decisions. And so there's a lot of times when I look at my 12-year-old and I'm like, what were you, and I actually tell him, like, I'm not mad at you right now, I'm just really mad at your brain. And really, when I think about it, I'm just mad at myself for having an expectation that you're an adult. You know, I put this expectation that he's going to be an adult and act like a small adult when he's not. He's a kid, you know. And that goes for the other boys and my daughter as well. But one thing I think that we can do, so the one thing about being resilient, resilient grows from pain, right? Resilient grows from those difficult challenges in life. That's how you become resilient, right? There is a terrible song that we will not sing tonight because it is secular, but it's about getting knocked down and getting up again. And that's kind of the definition of resilient. Now, we are not going to sing a drinking song, so I'm sorry, Bill, for
So disappointedly.
but that's the context of resilience is the fact of there are things in life that are going to be challenging. There's things in life that are going to be upsetting. There's things in life that are going to be disappointing. And so it's okay to allow our kids to be disappointed. It's okay to allow our kids to fail and to encourage them through that, because it's through those difficult moments that resilience can grow. It's kind of helping them understand, okay, well, that was not the best choice, and how are you going to cope with that, and choosing positive coping strategies to help. And as Lon said earlier with Sticky Faith, living out the example with them, not just for them, or having not having an expectation for them to live life, you know, this Christian life, but live as an example with them.
Lon, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think maybe in addition to what Link was saying, you know, we all have hard things that happen, and we all experience them and deal with them a little bit differently. Some of us have a higher, you know, tolerance for stress and things than others. But I think for our kids, one of the biggest things across the board is, do they have a safe place at home? They may deal with all kinds of mess in the world, and they will. But, you know, can they come home and have a safe place to be able to talk to their parents openly about the things that they're dealing with? You know, do they feel safe and secure at home with their parents so that they can talk about the breakup, or so that they can talk about the fear that they have that they're not going to pass the test, or they're not going to get accepted to the school they want to go to, or about the thoughts that they're having about hurting themselves? Do they feel like they can talk about those things openly with their parents? And I think that when there is that safe environment at home, they may fall apart, but they can fall apart and be put back together by their parents that love them and that are safe for them.
We have about 15 minutes left, and I want us to deal with, in a sense, just last three main issues, and really hear from each one of you in some aspect of these. The first one is the idea of what are some ways my spouse can help me as I'm struggling with mental issues or mental health. And then really is that I'd like for us to broaden that just a little bit and to say, and I know we touched on this last week a little bit, David, but overall, what can we do as Christians, as Christian mates, to do that? The second thing I want us to address is I come to you and I am in the midst of this pain. I'm in the midst of this agony. I'm in the midst of all sorts of things going on. And I come to you and I say, I just don't see God anywhere in this. You know, where is God in the midst of my pain and my struggle? And I'd like for you to maybe address that. So let's, each one of you sort of give, if somebody were to come to you and ask you, let's start with a spouse or somebody who somebody who loves them. What would you encourage? Again, what are some things my spouse, my friend could do to help me as I'm struggling with mental health?
I think the problem so often is we want to fix it. And so typically a woman may go to her husband and she's venting, she's just telling him what's going on, and he wants to jump in there and fix it. So he's like, well, you can quit your job, or you can do this, or you can... Okay, that's not the point. Here's 3 magic words, and it always works, okay? Tell me more. Now, guys, if when your wife comes to you and she is going off and you were to just calmly sit there and listen and then say, tell me more, she's going to wonder who you are and what you did with her husband, right?
Because an alien has come in and
right.
taken over the body of your husband.
Well, we're talking about compassion. You know, passion in the Latin means suffering. So common passion, right? Compassion, common suffering. We've all suffered. So if we would just get out of ourselves and go to that Philippians 2 mindset of considering others more important than our own and listen. We don't want to listen. We're already 3 steps ahead. So just simply, male or female, when your spouse comes to you with a problem, take it seriously. Don't discount it. Don't say, well, you shouldn't feel that way, right? Encourage them to tell you more about it. And in the process of talking through it, 9 times out of 10, they'll come up with their own answer.
So we could practice this tonight. You guys ready? We're going to, on the count of 3, we're going to say, tell me more. 1, 2, 3. Tell me more. Some of you are looking at your spouse right now. They're like, okay, somebody else about helping and coming alongside. Anybody else? I'd really like for each of you to sort of go ahead, Link. You got.
It's kind of interesting because one of the people I follow on kind of like Instagram or Facebook, whatever, is Dr. Henry Cloud, who writes like a lot of the boundaries books and boundaries for your teens and boundaries for your pets and boundaries, for your boundaries, but all of those things. But just a couple of hours ago, he was talking about in relationship, he says how important safety is, and if you want to know how safe someone is, ask yourself, is this person with me or for them, or are they for us, right? And he kind of ends it with this statement of, it's no sin to bring your needs to the relationship, but it is a sin to exploit the relationship for your own ends only. And so I think there is a balance, but I would say, how can I as a spouse support my wife? I think it is kind of like that, tell me more. Behind that tell me more is that is really that experience of being curious. And curiosity is saying, I want to know more about what you're experiencing right now. And curiosity says, whatever's going on in my life right now, I'm not going to bring up because I'm really interested in you and how I can help you right now, or or what you're experiencing and what I might be able to do in order to maybe help alleviate, because it could be something, a lot of times it's something I'm doing. So, but be curious and be safe, be curious, and you know, that, you know, allow, I guess, them to have the spotlight for a moment, you know, and not try to make it about you.
Good
you know, I
point,
think is what that
yeah.
statement, that quote was saying.
You know, I like your spotlight. David? You
Yeah,
wanna
and
add along?
you know, in those conversations, don't judge the emotions as they're coming out, or even the articles as they come out, and they're talking through things and working through things. I think that's just an important posture to take in any sort of a relationship where you want somebody to be able to express themselves and move toward better. They need to feel like Link was saying, just very safe. From a personal standpoint, right? There are things that you can do that are very, very positive for your mental health. May not be a cure-all situation, but they don't hurt. Let's put it that way. Making sure that you personally get exercise. Now, I want to be careful, right? As a husband, and pointing to my wife and saying, hey, you need to go get exercise, right? Because number one, I'm a problem solver, but number two, I might be stepping in a hornet's nest, right? But, you know, that's something, you know, join me on a walk tonight. There's something just almost mystical about getting outside, breathing fresh air, getting your heart rate up, you know? Are we eating right together? You know, our diets affect our mood affects our mental state, and so there is a lot of connection with that. Is the person finding good and solid relationships that they're connecting with? Maybe I'm that relationship, but maybe I'm somebody that takes them into positive relationships as well. So there are a number of things that I personally need to take personal responsibility for in my own mental health. But there are also things that if I approach it the right way, right, I can encourage my spouse or another person to join me in those activities that are helpful for their own mental health.
Juan, is there anything you want to add?
I think this may kind of cross over to some things that have already been said, but I think that, you know, safety is important. So we need to be where we feel safe to express what we're thinking, what we're feeling. So I think that, you know, in a husband-wife relationship, we need to give them the space to be able to feel and experience what they're experiencing and feel safe in doing that with us. To be patient, to be comforting, to be supportive. One of the things that's a major factor for people being able to recover through mental health concerns is having support from loved ones. It's important to have professional support, you know, doctor, counselor, but it's equally or more important to have family, friends who are supportive in what you're going through. And so having that in your partner, in your best friend, in your life mate is hugely important.
Okay, so again, we about 7 minutes, and this is something we started off the evening. In the starting off the evening, we said, as a Christian, we're not above. In fact, we're not above struggling with, you know, depression, anxiety, and a host of other things that, and that's being a Christian doesn't exempt us from that. So I'm a Christian, and I'm in the midst of all of that, and I've felt close to God, but now I don't. Or I'm trying to find God in the midst of the pain. What would be some things that you would recommend, suggest, talk about in the midst of this? It's more than going, well, we'd like for you to pick up your daily Bible and stuff like that. But I mean, what could you say to help, in a sense, begin to bridge the perceived gap? I want to say perceived gap because I believe God is right there at our brokenness. The perceived gap of God's absence.
Yeah, one of the first things that I want to point you to is Jesus in the garden, right? For lack of a better term in our modern terminologies, you look at the words that he's experienced there, the emotional state that he's experiencing, he's having a panic attack, right? I mean, he's in Luke's gospel, he's sweating drops of blood. And this is, the weight of the world is on him. And the reason that I want to say that is that I want all of us to recognize that he joins us in our pain. that he's experienced it. And as our Hebrew author would put it, we don't have a high priest who hasn't experienced life, and I'm paraphrasing here, who hasn't experienced life. We have one who's been tempted like us and has gone through the depths of everything. And so not even God on earth was immune to this, right? So he's there along with you, and part of that is because we're in a broken world that is attacked constantly by Satan and his minions, and part of it is our own doing as people, right? We've chosen bad things, and it's led to bad consequences for myself and other people. And I think that theologically speaking, God has been battling against this from the very beginning, right? But all of us have, and this is a little bit philosophical, I get it, but God has been battling against that because enough to give you choices to do things, as well as those things that are beyond the veil of my sight, those beings that are beyond the veil of my sight. And sometimes we've chosen good things, and sometimes we've chosen things that are against God, and it has led to a situation where we all needed Jesus. And so God has been there from the very beginning, and he's here in your pain right now and will be in the future. And maybe it's not so much that Jesus is joining me in my pain, but that when I really consider what he experienced there in the garden and all the way up to the cross, is that I'm joining him in his and getting a little taste of what it meant from a Christian's perspective to go through hell in those moments. But also, there was resurrection on the other side of that, and that's the hope that you and I share, that the rest of this world needs to know that they're not partaking in yet. So,
Another real practical thing, some people say, I wish I had the personal journals of somebody that struggled that was close to God. Well, we have that in the Psalms. And so David is a man after God's own heart, but when you read Psalms 13, he starts out, "How long, O Lord, are you going to forget me forever? My enemies are all around me. I struggle with my thoughts day and night." And then cognitively he says, "But I will praise you because you've been good to me." So a lot of my clients over the years have started writing letters to God, okay? We did, several years ago, I did a little journaling class here. That's one of the things we talked about. And when you're writing a letter to God, it sounds weird, but when I would do it, in the middle of a sentence, I might be saying, Lord, I'm struggling with this anxiety, and it's just so hard. And since it's taking me a moment to write it, my brain is ahead of me, and I don't know if this is the way the Holy Spirit works or what, but in the middle of that sentence, I'm thinking, okay, Philippians 4, the Lord said this, and I will stop. Don't think I'm totally crazy. I will stop and respond to that in that sentence. So I'm writing, and then I'll stop and I'll say, I know, Lord, I should take everything to you thankfully and receive this peace that passes understanding. But, and I take off again, and then there's another enlightenment. So I would, from a practical point of view, I would really encourage people to spend some time writing letters to God and listen.
Okay. We got 2 minutes left, and Link, and then Lon.
Okay. The two guys with the same shirts, same
Yes.
jeans. LB. All right.
Yeah.
I really David took mine, so one of them did. But honestly, like I do love the image. Well, I don't. It sounds weird to say I love the image of Jesus, in the garden. But in Matthew 26, I mean, the words that are used there, is that he's deeply troubled. He tells his disciples he's deeply troubled. You look at the Greek terminology there, and it's like grieving in your soul, is like great despair and sadness, right? And we might call that like a depressive episode. In Luke chapter 22, the word is agony. And you look at the Greek word there, and it's actually the word for anxiety. And so we have Jesus, Matthew's version, Luke's version, and it's like, here's the Son of God who was one with God. I and the Father are one, feeling the absence of God at times, and experiencing anxiety, experiencing depression, experiencing these things that we do, like David was saying, I think we do have this high priest that is very relational to what we are experiencing, that gives us hope that we are not alone in this. And when we do feel isolated and alone, especially after the 2 years of being in a pandemic where we have been isolated. And so I think that there's a lot of great hope in that. as well as the challenge and for us as a community of faith. Because honestly, I'm really humbled right now because I've been here for 20 years almost, a member of Sunset, and I'm looking across this audience. I'm seeing people that have all sorts of different expertise in this thing called pain, anxiety, and so we can all help one another.
Lon has 10 seconds. Thank you, Lee. Real quickly.
So I think, kind of like the others have talked about, looking at the anchors of our faith, there's a really good book that talks about the anchors of our faith when we're going through really difficult times. And one of the big ones that David mentioned earlier, Jesus, what he lived through, what he went through, what he's done for us. And as we're starting our 2 Corinthians class, and we've already started that, this is a section that I really think about a lot. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort that we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the suffering of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. I think that, it really comes back to that Jesus loves us, that he went through the same things that we went through, and that he is alive in heaven today, and we have hope of being with him someday. And that's really the main anchor, whenever I think about, I'm in the middle of this and like, where is God? And he's right in there with us.
Okay, thank you. Again, what I want to reiterate is this. First off, thank you for being here. The other thing I want to tell you is this, is that we are here to help. We are here to help. And if we did not get to your question tonight, I'm truly sorry. Again, we just have limited time. If you wrote a question and you really are seeking answers, they've read all the questions, they're familiar with them, and you could do that. I want to end by telling you two things. Next week is Meet Me at the Movies. For those of you who are new at Meet Me at the Movies, come to the East Foyer about 6:45, and you're going to love this place, all right? Bring a whole 75 cents. And you're going to get a soda, you're going to get popcorn, and you're going to get a candy bar. All right? But we're going to have a good time. We're going to take some movie clips and create a really beautiful Bible lesson. I want to close tonight by asking our shepherd, Gary, to come up and pray over us, please. And then really fast, go get your kids.
Thanks, Bill, for putting this together. Gentlemen, let's show our appreciation. They put a lot of years in preparation in this, and I have a special passion for people who have a passion for people. So that's wonderful. Let's say a prayer. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for your many blessings today. And tonight, as we reflect on mental health, the complexity of how you've made us emotionally, we just stand in awe of how many facets and aspects there are. Thankful for these godly men and their wisdom tonight that they're sharing with us, how to travel through the difficulties of life and how to maintain a godly spirit in all of that. Forgive us, Father, when we feel like we don't see you. Forgive us when we doubt your presence, and help us to be assured by some of the things that were said tonight. Thankful, Father, for this church. We pray for the elders who are going through an elder selection process. We pray that we have wisdom and can add good men to this eldership that will help give direction and shepherding. Watch over us tonight. Thankful for our children. In Jesus we pray. Amen.
Now get the resources up here at the front. Here, Gary, I'll take that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh,
And thank you
yes.
for always being so funny. We need that.